Alex Kennedy, hoopshype.com. Feel like there was some sort of synergy here. Alex sent me a direct message earlier, said, hey, can we move our time? And it ended up working out perfectly because, Alex, we wouldn't have I guess we would have been in the middle of it here. But it's gotten crazy. All of a sudden, Boston, Philly, number one, Fultz, what's happening here?
Yeah, in the last 30 minutes, we've seen a lot of reports from really credible reporters, Adrian Wojnarowski, Mark Stein, Zach Lowe, that are saying that the Celtics and Sixers are talking about a possible deal that would give Philadelphia the number one overall pick in the draft, and they would likely draft Markelle Fultz, who I think is the best player in this draft. I've told you that before. I think he has superstar potential. He's a guy that is a perfect fit for today's NBA when you talk about his offensive skill set. Just so much potential. He's much younger than even the other one-and-done guys in this draft, so he has so much potential, such a high ceiling. I think most people around the NBA agree that he is the guy to get. A team like Boston, though, they have a point guard in Isaiah Thomas. They have Avery Bradley in that backcourt as well. There's been talk recently in recent days that they like Josh Jackson. They feel like he's a better fit for them on their roster because he's someone that is more of a two-way player, more of a swing man that can fit in with their core of Thomas and Bradley and Al Horford. So it's possible that, they're looking at their options, and rather than reaching for Jackson at number one, they would choose to move down to pick number 3 and then be able to draft Jackson there. And then Philadelphia, it would be perfect for them because they would get their floor general of the future to put alongside Ben Simmons, Embiid, and these other young players.
Alex, I thought there was talk, though, about from the Sixers, in fact, about them wanting Ben Simmons to be their point guard. If that's the case, how would a Fultz-Simmons backcourt work?
Well, Fultz is a guy that can play off the ball as well. Unlike Lonzo Ball, who's more of a distributor and passer that needs the ball in his hands to make his teammates better, Fultz is a guy that can be a dominant scorer. So you can have Simmons run the offense at times and then have Fultz be your number one scorer around him. It really does actually work well. I think that dynamic will be really interesting with Fultz and Embiid. You can run pick and roll and they could score the ball and have a lot of success. I think Fultz can play off of Simmons really well. That's why this is so good for the Sixers. If they're able to pull this trade off and get Fultz, he's the perfect player for them. I honestly believe that. He's the best player in this draft, and his skill set perfectly fits what they need. People have talked about Lonzo Ball potentially to Philadelphia just so they could get that point guard of the future, but Ball is a guy that I think wouldn't even fit as well as someone like Fultz. The fact that Fultz can run an offense and be a traditional point guard if necessary, but then also flip that switch and be a scorer, be a guy that plays off the ball. It just makes so much sense. And if you're looking at this team next year and we're looking at a core of Fultz, Simmons, Embiid, and then some of these other young guys that they assembled, that's a very talented roster that could fight for a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. And then certainly you're talking about a team that is going to be attractive to free agents in the future, a team that 5 years from now, we could be talking about them having multiple stars. And, as we've talked about, over the months that I've been coming on your show, that's what this whole process was about, acquiring multiple stars and acquiring the draft picks and pieces so that you can make a move like this whenever the situation presents itself. And I think it goes back to Sam Hinkie. I think you have to give Sam Hinkie some credit for being able to assemble these draft picks, assemble these young players, and put this team in a position where now you can make a play for the number one overall pick, and you could put together a core that features so much talent.
Alex Kennedy, hoopshype.com. How much is too much to give up? It's going to be a package of draft picks. Doesn't sound like players' names are being discussed. They obviously, like you just said, they put themselves in position to make this deal. But if you trade the Laker pick and the Kings pick, is that too much, or do you not blink?
It really depends on what they think of Markelle Fultz. I think I would give up quite a bit to get Fultz just because he's that talented. Adrian Wojnarowski did report that they're waiting on medical information. Anytime you have a move like this where a guy like Fultz, was thinking he'd be either in Boston or LA, a team like Philly doesn't really get his medical information. But now that they're in the mix for the number one pick, Philly has to get his information, and they're now, kind of catching up and getting his file that they can pour over before making a move like this. So there are some things they want to look at before they make a move. They want to see if he's healthy. They want to make sure there's no red flags in there. You obviously want to do your due diligence before pulling off a trade like this. But I think if everything checks out, then, I don't think giving up extra picks, 1 or 2 extra picks would be that big of a deal. I think he's that talented of a player. Like I said, I'm not talking about Fultz as having a star potential. I'm talking about superstar potential. That's how good this guy can be. And I think in today's NBA, you need a superstar point guard to compete. You look at the teams that have been able to win championships. This year, obviously, it was Steph Curry versus Kyrie Irving. There are so many talented point guards around the NBA now. Russell Westbrook, James Harden, go down the list. There's so many guys that are talented at that position. And if you don't have a star point guard, it's very hard to make a deep playoff run and compete for a championship. So that's why I think this move is so important for Philly. And, obviously you want to try to pull off this move without giving up too many picks. But Danny Ainge is a guy that is very good at his job. He's very good at, getting what he wants back in trade negotiations. So he's going to try to get as many picks as possible. But I do think that, these teams can find a balance where Boston's able to get, an extra pick or two and still be able to draft their guy at number 3. And then Philly gets their point guard of the future who can really help Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid as they continue to develop.
Does this conversation even happen, Alex, if Josh Jackson doesn't improve his status as high as he's gone? Is Boston falling in love with him?
Well, I think it's interesting because Josh Jackson hasn't worked out for Boston. So I think, they fell in love with him kind of on their own, independently. I think it was a matter of them looking at their team and just thinking who makes the most sense for them from a fit standpoint. They were watching film of Josh Jackson, and then certainly he did well in his other workouts. He worked out for some other teams and did a really good job, and then that kind of created some buzz for him. So I think, Josh Jackson has helped his status, but it's not like he went into a Boston workout and dominated, and that's what led to this. If Jackson wasn't there and there wasn't another player they fell in love with, then I think Boston probably would have, taken Fultz and tried to make it work in that backcourt. Markelle Fultz and Isaiah Thomas are friends. They both went to Washington. They've worked out together in the off seasons. So, there was a lot of people that just thought Boston was going to take Fultz, and then after that is when the draft would get interesting. But now it seems like Danny Ainge has been, really all in on Josh Jackson in recent days, and they're going to try to get him in for a workout. Now, certainly if it looks like they're going to draft him, then you have to imagine Josh Jackson's camp would kind of rearrange their schedule and reconsider things and, send him out there for a workout. So, without Jackson, this doesn't happen. It's not like they would do this kind of move for Alonzo Ball or anything like that. I think it takes this kind of player, a guy like Josh Jackson, for Boston to be interested. But he's the typical Danny Ainge player. He's a two-way player. He's a great athlete. It reminds me kind of like Jaylen Brown last year, a guy that had a lot of potential that, he fell in love with. He loves these kind of athletes that can play both ends of the floor and impact the game in many different ways. So it doesn't surprise me. He's certainly a Danny Ainge type player.
Really, just a bomb here at late into the 5 o'clock hour on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. We're talking with Alex Kennedy from hoopshype.com. Several reports saying the Sixers and Celtics are deep into discussion for the number 1 pick. Just to kind of reiterate on something you said, the Philadelphia is getting medical information on Fultz. Does that kind of indicate, as you kind of touched on this a little bit, but does that kind of indicate that this is serious, right? This is these two teams are down and dirty, and the medical information to get to Philadelphia really means that these two teams have something really cooking.
Yeah, for sure. The fact that they're getting medical information and the fact that they've reached out to Fultz's camp and they're talking about getting Markelle out to Philadelphia for a meeting tomorrow, that shows kind of where things are at. It's not like, these teams are talking and saying, well, maybe there's something here. These talks have advanced to the point that they're serious. If you're getting medical information on a guy, if you're setting up a meeting for him in the next 24 hours, that's a serious conversation. Those dialogues probably started a few days ago, and now, they're kind of culminating to this. So I do think that we're pretty far along here. Now it's a matter of obviously working out the specifics in terms of, what picks are going to be traded and all of that. But certainly these teams have talked for a while, and now it's pretty serious. But I'm excited, honestly. Just being an objective observer of the NBA, I cannot wait, to see a Markelle Fultz backcourt in Philadelphia. He's a guy that averaged 23.2 points, 5.9 assists, ridiculously efficient. He just turned 19 years old. That's the thing I was talking about. Josh Jackson is 20 and a half. Lonzo Ball is about to turn 20. Fultz was 18 years old last month. I mean, it's just crazy how young this kid is, and he was still able to dominate at the collegiate level. He's such a good fit alongside Ben Simmons and Embiid. I can't stress that enough. He can play off the ball. This thing is definitely serious, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun for Philly if it goes down. I'm a Sixers fan right now. I'm celebrating.
He's very Ben Simmons-esque, a kind of a a school at not a big basketball school, LSU, bigger basketball school than Washington. But some would say, just take the detractor side, as my producer Josh said, why did they only win, 9 games at Washington? How good can this guy be if they can only get to 9 wins with that team? Now, Simmons' team didn't make the tournament, but they at least won, 18, 19 games at LSU.
Yeah, some people have brought that up about Fultz throughout this process, that, his stats didn't lead to wins. He didn't have much help around him, I will say that. I think anytime you're looking at a player, you want to consider the players that are around him and the supporting cast around him. He didn't have much help. That is one of the reasons why he put up such big numbers too, because the ball was in his hands so often. But, I blame the fact that he didn't have a lot of help. They were kind of recruiting for the future as well. They obviously landed him, and it was a huge get for them. But then, now the coach is gone. They were looking at future, recruiting classes, and the situation just wasn't great, I would say. But I think Fultz can definitely translate, his skill set, his success into wins at the next level. And I'm really excited to see what he can do with NBA talent around him, just like with Ben Simmons. We talked about that when he was in college. A guy like that, when you're a point guard that can play so well off the ball, but then also create for others, when you're a guy like Ben Simmons who it just, makes his teammates so much better, the more talent you can get around those guys, the better. So if you're talking about a core of Fultz, Simmons, Embiid, and then, name the guys around them, whether it's Robert Covington, Rashawn Holmes, guys like that are already in place there, maybe some free agent signings. I think if this comes together and Fultz does land in Philly, you're going to see some free agents maybe look at Philadelphia now and say, okay, this is a team that's on the rise. This is a playoff team. Maybe I want to go there. That's only going to make Fultz and Simmons better. So I'm not too concerned about his college losses. I think that a guy that young, you're drafting him based on his potential and the fact that he could be a superstar in a few years. And it was the same with Simmons. And also, I do want to add this. We haven't talked since I did this interview with Rashawn Holmes recently. I talked to Holmes. The interview is going to run here in the next few days. And I asked him about Ben Simmons, and Holmes raved about Simmons. He said that all season long, Simmons was a freak of nature. He's going to be a superstar in the NBA. That Holmes had, really high expectations for Simmons and what he could do for this team. But then Simmons blew those expectations out of the water. He was that good. He said that he's never seen someone with this mix of size, speed, skill set, and he predicted that Simmons is going to be one of the best players in the NBA very soon. So very strong words, very strong praise from Rashawn Holmes talking about what he saw from Ben Simmons behind the scenes this year. And that article is going to run on Hoops Hype either today or tomorrow.
Check that out. Wow, man, Friday we keep throwing the bombs out at you. Alex Kennedy, hoopshype.com, at Alex Kennedy NBA. Check out his interview with Rashawn Holmes coming up with Rashawn's take on Ben Simmons. All right, good stuff here as we're getting ready to wrap up the show. Appreciate the time as always, Alex.
Thanks for having me. Take care.